live. Welcome to another live broadcast today. I hope you guys having a wonderful day. Today is June the 10th, 2026, and boy, is it getting warm out there. And we'll talk. I'll mention that in just a moment. But yeah, it's getting warm out there. Today, we're going to talk about the Karmelo effect and what exactly does that mean. But we're going to lead off with a little bit different than what we normally do. In fact, I will be inviting you to don't even watch if you don't feel like it. We're going to get into that, and I'm going to explain why I said what I said, okay? Because, it's going to be that kind of broadcast. We're just going to, but it's also going to require you to be, just as I do my utmost, to be very blunt, very transparent and honest. It's going to require you to do the same. And I would love so much to hear back from you, especially tonight, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and I'll put some music on. Again, it will be for about a minute, and then we'll go ahead and get started, okay? Welcome to the broadcast. All right, getting ready to start. Let's go ahead and get into it. Thank you so much for tuning in to this broadcast. Yeah, it's hot out here, man. 104. It was just 105, so it went down a whole degree while we were sitting here waiting. And so it's 104 degrees out here in beautiful, sunny, very sunny Arizona, man. It's cooking. It's starting to cook out here. So, yeah, the sun is doing what it's doing, and it's really something. So I hope you guys getting out, doing your thing with the sunlight and the air and the breathing and all of that stuff that we've been saying over and over again. But today, okay, as you know, we're going to discuss, get into we're going to talk about the Karmelo Anthony stuff. But we're going to try to do it from, as we always do, try to do it from a very different perspective, one that will hopefully be introspective to you. But also, I want to start off with this, okay? Now, first of all, I want to say a big thank you and a big shout out to all of you who, every time I hit that live button, you're there. And I appreciate that. I really do. I actually do the show, the broadcast, a lot of times it's throughout the day, meaning I'm in my car or I'm out walking, that kind of thing. I talk to myself all the time, and I'm sure some of you do too. And this is just me putting it on camera, and that's really all it is. Do you like seeing, your platform grow and do all this stuff? Yeah, of course. But It's really not been my driver because I'm not one that's really looked for that. Like one day, maybe I'll have a syndicated show and they'll pick me up and all of that. And I'm like, I really never wanted any of that at all. I mean, I know people in the industry and all of that and, you know, stuff like that, but I've never, that's never been a passion of mine like that. I just like doing what I'm doing now, and that's just what it is. But oftentimes people will ask me, well, I every now and then I should say I'll get people that will say, man, it's like you just repeat yourself a lot. And I do, and there's a reason for that. And what we're going to talk about tonight is going to hone in on why I do that. And I have many examples I'm going to give you on that. But if you are someone that basically that do watch us, or you follow this platform, and you watch the videos and stuff, tonight there are going to be some things that I'm going to say that I've been saying, I say quite often. And anytime I put together a video, or I want you to understand the person that you're watching and you're listening to. I'm not one that just simply like, okay, I'm having a bad day. Let me get in front of the camera and tell the whole world how bad my day is, or let me get in the camera and just tell the world, as if my personal whatever is, I just have this thing that I believe that people are interested in my personal day-to-day stuff. I don't think that at all, I oftentimes think about, why am I here? I'm sure many of you ask those same questions too. Why am I here? Why are we here, or whatever? One thing for me that, like I told you, as you guys know, I really love history, really, really love history. I also love documenting things. And I feel like part of my mission, or whatever you want to call it, here is to just do that, to observe and report. Many years ago, I was in security, and that was one of the things that they really drove home, in the training, was you're there to just simply observe and just report. That's it. You're not there to be an officer to enforce anything at all, other than, within reason. If somebody's coming on the property, they're not supposed to be there. You could vocally tell them, hey, listen, there's a protocol that you follow, and, if they don't adhere to that, then you pick up the phone and call the police, but that's it. But you're not to do anything else. You're there to document everything. And one of the things I learned from that job was that's exactly what we did. Literally every hour I was documenting, even if it was very rote and mundane. That's what they paid me to do. I had to document literally everything. And to this day, I'm sure they have that all stored away somewhere. So they can go back in time and say, okay, on such and such date, the officer that we had on on shift that evening, this is what he saw. And we're able to narrow it down and correlate it with video and all that kind of stuff, right? So when I was doing that, I really saw the importance of that, of documenting everything. And for my own personal life, that's what I do. I like to observe things and watch things and listen, and I do that just for my own record, and so when I'm doing these videos and stuff, of course, I'm inviting people to come in and to listen, to participate and all of that. But I'm really doing it for me. I'm just going to be honest with you. Because for whatever in the future, if someone cares to hear my little perspective on things, it's documented, and of course, my favorite topic is talking about all the what we call the Black community, the ins and outs, the good, the bad, the indifferent, the ugly, all of that. I just love talking about all of it. You know what I mean? That's just one of my favorite things. I love that. And so for me, I'm going to talk about all of it. And so what I know what I do know is it's not just talking about it, since I'm sharing, just my open thoughts about things regarding the Black community. Um, I also have to be very aware of how I communicate, and so one of the things too is I have to be very cautious. For example, I know that like, let's say, for example, if I'm talking about Black women, right? It's a topic that's dealing with Black women. What I understand, what I do know as a communicator and one that does understand, have a good understanding of Black culture, is that you have to be very specific when you're talking about that topic. In other words, if I were to be talking about, let's say the topic was talking about Black women, for example, I have to be very specific in making sure that I'm not generalizing and saying all Black women. So if you are someone, particularly those who follow me, you know that I will always say that. I will always make it very clear if I'm talking about a subset of Black women. I will never say all Black women are this or all Black women are that. I will repeatedly will always say we're not talking about, this does not reflect all Black women. That's not true at all, right? I'm only talking about a subset. So one of the creative things not necessarily came up with, but I just used what was already out there, was when we're dealing with, let's say, feminist, liberal Black women, we just call them the 92%. That's what we're talking about. So if I'm talking about that subset, that's how I address them. But then I will always say, I'm not saying all Black women fall into that, nor am I saying that they are the representatives of all Black women, because that wouldn't be true at all. Same thing goes with men. I wouldn't say that. Now, men aren't really as sensitive to that, but they can be. And so you always got to be very clear with that. Well, it's the same goes when I'm talking about just Black people in general. I have to be very careful and clear in my communication and making sure that people understand that I'm not talking about all Black people. It doesn't apply to the things I'm saying here. It only applies to those who it applies to. That's it, And so those are certain sensitivities that when you're communicating, you have to always be very clear about those things. And what I do know is that oftentimes people will have selective hearing. They will hear exactly what they want to hear and they'll just run with it. You know what I mean? And some people, no matter what you do, no matter how many times you try to explain and say that, they will still, come with their own conclusions. So we'll talk more about that, but but that's something, like I said, so tonight, between the repeating myself on certain topics, and even with that, we're going to, that all hovers onto this first thing I want to show you. This is a video that my son sent to me. And it's funny, your children, sometimes you just wonder, it's like, do they even hear anything I'm saying? Because I'm pretty loud up in here. And man, they will send things and they will always be right on time. And I'm like, wow, man, I guess they are. Anyway, my son sent a video that I want to share with you. The video itself is about 20 minutes long. Obviously, we're not going to watch the whole video, but I think this would be a great way to start. But before I play that video, I just want to make it very clear again. I do value and appreciate those of you who do follow us and listen and all of that. And I'm very, very self-conscious about, oh Lord, am I saying the same thing again? Am I saying the same stuff again? I don't get any joy or any whatever in talking about the negative aspects of Black culture. I don't get anything out of it. But when I'm talking about it, I do want you to understand that I'm talking about it as an observer. It's not like someone who really wants to understand. I'm seeking to understand why these things are the way they are. You understand? It's almost like someone who always had a fascination with, tinkering with stuff. When I was younger, a lot of young men, you guys can relate to this. I would get a old speaker. I'm taking it apart. I would get some electronics or something like that. Whatever it is, don't put it in my hands because I'm gonna take it apart and look at it and, oh, this is how it works. Well, let me attach a battery to these two wires. Oh my goodness, I got a little motor here. Maybe I could attach this and all of that stuff. So I was always fascinated with how things work. Well, that's just, a lot of boys can particularly identify with that, and along with you women, you ladies too, same thing. But I was always very fascinated with that. For me, I'm very fascinated with how people think and why people do the things they do. So when you're listening to me, don't see me as someone who's just like the old grandpa, so to speak, that's like, oh, let's talk about these niggas again tonight. That's not how I look at things. I'm looking at it clearly from, I really want to understand this. Why do people do these things? Why do they come to these conclusions? How do they come to these conclusions? And that's why, like, when ChatGPT came along, it really helped out a lot. I'm not saying it's, like I told you, AI isn't the absolute, in answers, but it definitely helped me a lot in giving me the quicker access to research papers, articles and things like that. And where I can really, and I can even run scenarios where I can see, okay, how does this play out? Why does this play out? Let's compare this to these other, incidents, times in history, and tell me let's contrast and compare and all of that stuff. I love doing all of that stuff. So I really like, it's almost like anthropology, basically. You know what I mean? That's kind of what I like. It's the study of culture, and that's kind of what I love to do. So when you hear me talking about these things, that's the perspective it's coming from. And so I know a lot of times people, when they hear only the negative part, when we're talking about the negative aspects, that's the part they zoom in on, and they just assume, oh, here we go. You just always, and no, that's not it at all, because you're not getting the whole picture. You know what I'm saying? So I just want to be very clear with that. And like I said, at any time, if you're like, man, okay, I've heard this before, man, you feel free. I don't, you can not watch, you can unsubscribe, whatever, that's fine. But this is kind of like my own personal study, if you will, and just really trying to understand things. Like for me, I really want to understand just the mindset of, once I came out of Christianity and the Hebrew thing, like, why do people gravitate towards those things, and really trying to understand that, you know what I mean? And that's why you'll never hear me, I don't say dogging out, but I do I try to show a lot of empathy for people who are still in Christianity, who are still in the Hebrew world, even though I am very critical of the belief system. But at the same time, I am not going to be a hypocrite and sit up here and act like I achieved and I'm above that, when I was in it as well. Now I'm past it, but at the same time, I can still be empathetic for people who are still in it, because I was there. You know what I'm saying? So that's me. I just try to understand things. I really am seeking to understand why things are the way they are. You know what I'm saying? And so that's where, when you're listening to me, that's what you're getting. That's the perspective you're getting. So I just wanted to really take that time and just kind of explain that, because for some people, they, maybe you don't really get that. You know what I mean? And so anyway, let's go ahead and get into it. So I want to start off tonight, and big shout out, obviously, to everybody that's in the chat. Really appreciate each and every one of you. Let me see who we got. Calculated Crescendo, as always, appreciate you. Justice in the house. Mauricia, really appreciate you. Justice, he said, Dwayne, what I struggle with is the inconsistency of the justice system. How come Kaysen Allison can literally get I think he was trying to say convicted from judicial system, but Karmelo Anthony can't? That's the thing I disagree with this case. Well, we'll talk about that. we'll talk about that, okay? And we'll get into that in a little bit, okay? So just hang in there, and then we'll get into it, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and let me find this video for you here. And this, I think, is going to be a very good place to start. Just give me a moment here, and I will get it up for you. Should I go in my history, or was that? Give me just a moment here. I think I will go into my history. I think I'll do that. I'll be able to find it there. I better be. If not, I know another place I can go. Okay, I can't find it there. Okay, so let me go to my son here, and here it is. And the thing I like about this particular video here is that it's coming from an individual. She is licensed, okay? So she's not just, this ain't just anybody. This is someone who's licensed in the field of education. And, you know, I'm listening to her, and I was like, wow, it's funny because what she's saying, we've been saying this same stuff on this platform. So like I said, again, we're not going to play the entire video. We're just going to play part of it here. And let me go and get this up on the screen here, and we'll go ahead and get started. Let's see here. Right here, there, and there. There we go. All right, so let's go ahead and take a listen to the video. This is Dr. Shantae. Let's take a listen.
It's becoming a class divide.
Sorry.
I recently posted a thread that said, literacy is fast becoming a class divide. Not formal education, literacy. There are so many people that just don't understand nuance, satire, entendre, or irony. Illiteracy cripples your ability to read the world and the room. The difference between people who regularly wrestle with complex ideas versus people who primarily consume clickbait content is vast. Most people think literacy means, can you read? But literacy means, do you understand what you're reading? Do you understand the situation that's playing out in front of you? Do you understand the context, the subtext, the complexities of the situation in front of you? Can you interpret the meaning behind the meaning? And unfortunately, there is a growing number of people who can't, who cannot do that. And in this video, I'm going to show you just how dangerous that is. Keep watching. Hi, I'm Dr. Shantae, and welcome to my YouTube channel. And what I do over here is reframe cultural narratives from a trauma-informed and sociological perspective. So let's get into it. So when we're talking about literacy, it's not just about having access to information and reading the information. It's about the ability to be able to interpret the information that is in front of you, because having information that you don't understand really doesn't help you. And one of the biggest dangers in this growing divide of people that can read the situation, that can read the room, that can read the politics and the dynamics at play, versus people who can't, is that when you don't have the ability to do that, you are outsourcing your intellect. You are outsourcing the ability to interpret the situation to somebody else. Because when you...
I have to stop there, because I really hope people understand that point. And this is a point that we have raised here over and over and over again. That is such a great point that she brought up here. When you do not, first of all, she established what literacy means. When you hear me say on this platform, when I'm talking about literacy, we're not just talking about someone's inability to read. That is not what I'm saying. Literacy is a whole wide space of not only being able to read, but like she said, being able to understand what you wrote. All right. So that's one part of literacy. But she's not going to get into this part here, but let me just blow it out even more. There's also literacy when it comes to communication, being able to read people, right? Being able to understand people. And what social media does, as I've said many times before, is that it strips away the other ways that we communicate on a daily basis when we're communicating with real people in real time in front of our faces. See, it's not just, when I'm communicating, that's for me, it's very important for me when I'm communicating to, as much as possible, to be in front of a camera. It's not because I just want you to see my beautiful face, but I want to make sure that what I am saying, you understand and you're getting. Because it's one thing when you just hear somebody, but it's another thing when you are also seeing my facial expression, my hand gestures, that kind of thing. When you're seeing that, that's the full package. And what's happening is on social media, remember we talked about this before. Why is it, again, this is that anthropology thing. Why is it that we see these arguments that just flare up? It goes from 0 to 100 in social media on comment sections. And it's because the communication part is vastly whittled down to just very basic. You understand what I'm saying? In other words, you wrote a comment, maybe you were in a rush, maybe you were in a hurry, or maybe you were distracted or whatever. Someone else sees that and they read it wrong. And you got to understand that people who are reading your comment, they are typically reading it in the tone in their head, not in your head, in their head, right? And they're also reading it with whatever biases that they have. So those are certain things that you're not going to be able to really overcome like 100%. So it's the goal, it should be the goal of the communicator to make sure that he or she, they are communicating in such a way where it's, it's understood, what's being said is being clearly understood by whoever it is that you're communicating to. You understand? And so, but what the internet does, what social media does, it strips all of that away. All right. Now, I'm going to pause here for a second for those who are tuning in. Welcome. If you're like, okay, well, what does this got to do with Karmelo Anthony? I told you in the beginning of the broadcast, we're going to look at this from a much different angle, but we're building our base here. And then you're going to find us in the middle of the Karmelo Anthony space. Okay. We're actually in it now. You just, it just, like I said, again, it's a slow build here. We got to get to that. Okay. But this is all connected and it's all related. And so that's why I want you to really focus and listen in what I'm saying, because when we get to that part, it's all going to make sense in what I'm saying here. Okay. So being able to read read people is something that is very lacking in today's society. When I listen to a lot of single adults, for example, and I'm listening to their dating stories, and they say, well, we met on one of the dating apps and all that stuff, and then we went to dinner and all that stuff, and it was just horrible because they did this, they said that, or whatever. And I'm sitting here listening like, okay, well, you didn't pick that up before going to dinner? You didn't pick that up? I mean, when you were talking on the phone, or were you just texting? And a lot of times you find out that these individuals were just texting one another, and then they decided, okay, we're going to meet up at dinner. But you missed all of these different social cues that could have helped you to have, to engage your discernment so that you could probably have saved yourself some money and some aggravation. You understand? And that's the problem that we're seeing a lot of. That's why one of the reasons why we're seeing all these negative dating stories is because the whole thing starts off in a space where you're not getting the whole picture. Not that you got to see everyone in 4K, but you at least should be able to have a full communication. You know what I mean? And I would even say FaceTime doesn't really count on that. I mean, physically there's something about when you're in the physical presence of somebody else, a real human being, you're able to pick up that vibe, that energy that they are giving off. You understand what I'm saying? But when you filter it through the digital space, a lot of that gets lost. You understand what I'm saying? So FaceTime is okay, but even with that, you're still losing some of that. So that's why one of the things we talk about here, this the importance of, if you're going to have a conversation, you know, especially an important one, it's very important that you're there, you're present with whoever it is that you're trying to talk to. You know what I mean? And so, so I just wanted to blow out a little bit when she talks about literacy. She's being very clear. Like she said, it's not just the ability to read, but it's also to be able to, the ability to understand what you wrote. And she's going to stay with that. What I did was saying that's true, but what we're also looking at is the ability to read people. And a lot of times people in today's world, they just simply don't know how to do that for the reasons why we just said. And like she said, the other point, which was very important, was that because when you do not have the ability to understand what you read, in other words, you're just reading it, what you're doing is giving others out there the license to interpret it for you. Okay, and she's going to get into that. So let me bring this video back up. I'll rewind it just a little bit because I really like what this woman is saying here. And let's get it up here and let's continue.
Don't have the ability to do that. You are outsourcing your intellect. You are outsourcing the ability to interpret the situation to somebody else, because when you can't read it for yourself, then you are at the mercy of somebody who can. So in real life, okay, real actual life, think about how this plays out when you're applying for a mortgage, or there's a health directive at the hospital, when you need to interpret certain clauses within insurance policy, when there are tax changes in your community, when there are referendums on the ballot that you don't understand. And so when you don't understand what's in front of you, when you don't understand the stakes, the consequences, the players involved, then you are at the mercy of somebody else reading that situation for you instead of you being able to read it for yourself. And what I'm seeing is a growing number of people who are not able to develop an informed perspective. They are developing talking points based on what somebody else said, not on research that they have done, not on the fine print that they have read, not on complexities of the situation that they understand. They are spouting an interpretation of an interpretation rather than actually reading the text. And as somebody who teaches English, so one of my many hats is English professor, I can always tell the students who have read the story and the students who went Googling on the internet looking for some cliff notes, some spark notes, some 1, 2, 3 snapshot summary of the book instead of actually reading the book itself and understanding character development, nuances, unreliable narrators, politics. You can tell when people haven't read it. And so when we have a vast number of people who are making decisions, who are showing up to voting booths, who have the power to shape policy or vote on policies that impact large numbers of people, and they don't quite understand what's in front of them, that's not just dangerous for them, that's dangerous for all of us. Which brings me to point number 2. We, more than any other civilization in history, have more access to information than ever before. And yet, information is not knowledge. And the ruling class, okay, the wealthy, the tech billionaires and the moguls of the world, okay, you know what they're doing? They're sending their children to college, good colleges, and telling you a college degree doesn't matter. They're building apps and technology that they want to capture your attention, that they want to engage and entertain you. But in their household, they have banned those apps. They don't let their children get on Instagram. They don't let their children have Facebook. Steve Jobs famously said, yeah, my kids don't have iPads. And so it's okay for you to spend time consuming that content. It's okay for you to be neurologically manipulated, because if you are not familiar with brain hacking, there's excellent information out there about the intentional manipulation of your dopamine in order to keep you locked into the algorithm, in order to keep you scrolling, in order to manufacture outrage, in order to manipulate your emotions. All of that is intentional. And the people who created that, they don't let that happen in their homes. They don't let that happen to their kids, but they're letting it happen to you. Because people who cannot think for themselves, people who are more emotional than they are rational, are very easy to manipulate, are very easy to control. And some of you have seen this in your families. You have seen it in their voting patterns. You have seen it in trying to engage them about complex issues of our day. And when you try to hit them with facts, okay, when you try to point them towards like research, when you try to point them towards evidence, they don't want to hear that. It's emotion, it's anger, it's hostility. If you haven't, there's an excellent kind of like TEDx illustration of Plato's allegory of the cave. I use it in my classroom all the time. But the long and the short of the allegory is that there are a group of prisoners that are chained up in a cave. One of the prisoners gets free and wanders outside the cave. And he realizes that everything he thought was real in the cave was not. It was just shadows. It was just illusions. It was just smoke and mirrors. But when he gets outside the cave and can actually see, touch, taste, feel, like have tangible evidence that what he thought was a reality was a complete fabrication and illusion, he's so excited he runs back into the cave to tell the other prisoners, hey, guess what? And the other prisoners, rather than being like, straight up, that's dope. Oh my gosh, I want to see, me too. No, they basically pommel him. They are hostile towards him. They think he is a nut job. They think he is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And he is met with so much hostility that he kind of like walks away dispirited. And that framing is very much what has happened to a lot of people who have lost their entire selves in the consumption of flattened content, in the consumption of algorithmic manipulation, who have discarded everything their parents taught them, who have discarded all of their values and latched on to these beliefs, to these ideologies that have zero foundation in science, zero foundation in research, that is ultimately a grift, okay? A grift. And people, instead of consuming the content and considering it and critically dissecting it, they have allowed the content to consume them. And so the ruling class, the wealthy, their children are not leaving comments, okay, in the comment section. Their children are being educated in the language of power, of money, of commerce, of political landscapes, of history and art and philosophy and other languages. They are learning how power works and how power moves. Meanwhile, a large swath of the population is just scrolling and clicking and commenting and commenting and clicking and scrolling. And I'm not saying that all screen time is bad screen time. I mean, hello. So, I mean, I realize the irony, right? But all screen time is not the same. And there are some people who have become so digitally addicted and so dependent on apps and algorithms to curate their reality that it's hard to pull them out, that it's hard to reason with them. So you have these two groups where one group is being raised in the language of influence and the other one is being groomed in the language of outrage. And I'm not saying that everybody needs to go to Harvard, okay? There's more than one way to access knowledge. There's more than one way to build your knowledge base. There's more than one way to become a critical thinker. But the people who have access and influence and are able to navigate the world in different social circles and different social circumstances because they understand the complexities of perspectives other than their own, those are the ones that are growing in power. Meanwhile, there's this dumbing down through technology that is an intentional manipulation. Perfect example.
I think that was it. That was the main thing I wanted to show you. Very, very nice presentation there. So yeah, her name is Dr. Shantae. I think I've heard of her before. I may have seen her before, whatever. But I thought it was a very good thing. I mean, what she's saying is right on the money, and it flows perfectly in what we're seeing playing out today. You know, is when you sit back and you look at, for example, you know, as we're getting into, you know, talking about, you know, the Karmelo Anthony situation. When we sit back and we look at this, here you have a portion of social media who's really bought into this whole Karmelo Anthony. I mean, fully 100, 1,000, 10,000% engage in it, as if this is this is the center of the universe, right? When you sit back and you look at this, regardless of what side you're on or whatever, the people who are fully engaged in this are engaged in it at such a tenor that they believe that this is it. This is the world. But when you step back a little bit, just a little bit, you'll see that the world is still going on. Stock market didn't crash. People still out there investing, making money and all of that, right? People still buying houses, selling homes, buying cars, technology. They're still making advancements in technology. I was reading about some things happening now. AI. McDonald's is going to be rolling out some new AI, and really bringing in AI into their business. I saw this one video where they were talking about when you go to the I think it's McDonald's. They actually, because I saw the demo where as long as you got your phone with you that's connected to the internet and you have the app open, when you go to the drive-through, it's going to be like, "Hey, Dwayne, how you doing? Well, let's see. Let me pull up what you ordered before." And what you ordered before was this. Now you want me to get that for you again? It's very personalized. So that's what drive-through is going to look like in the very near future. That's really big backery to me stuff. I mean, that's, if I ever pulled up to a McDonald's, which you will never see me do. I haven't been to McDonald's in years, and they're like, "The usual, Dwayne, the 6-piece nuggets and the Big Mac and all of that." And I'm like, "Oh, shh, don't say that. Not too loud. I'm not supposed to be eating all that stuff." You know what I mean? That's some big backery stuff there, but that's where they're going. So there's some major advancements, things that are going to be rolled out between now, because we're like at the halfway point of 2026. They are gearing up like you wouldn't believe, because 2027 is the year that we're going to see a lot of things launching. So in the world of technology, there's been a ton of things that have been going on in the last few days. They haven't stopped. I just heard a few hours ago, I was just reading about how United States is bombing yet again Iran. Did that change? Did they stop the bombing? They was like, "Wait a minute. We're waiting right now for the Karmelo Anthony verdict right now. We're waiting right now. We're trying to see right now, before we decide to drop these bombs, let's make sure we hear what's going on down in Texas." Oh. The rest of the world's been being the rest of the world. And so when you are tied into, like they said, the algorithm like that, it literally doesn't, it basically is not giving you the full picture of the rest of the world. You're really not seeing the whole picture. And what you're seeing is a curated version of the world. And so if you are a person that's not, where you're so emotionally tied to stories like this, you miss out the bigger perspective on different things, right? You're not, and you're just, for every post you see, it's helping to build up a narrative in your head. But for many people, that narrative was curated and built not by you, but by other people. Okay, let me give you an example. Let me go back to our friend here, who said, and I'll go back what Justice said. He said, "Dwayne, I'm just reading the comments, the comments in the live here, but I had to scroll back. Someone said, Dwayne, what I struggle with is the inconsistency of the justice system. How come Case and Allison," I have to think on that, who that was again. Was that the cop in Texas? Not sure. Can literally get convicted. I think you were trying to say convicted from the judicial system, but Karmelo Anthony can't. I think I know what you're trying to say there. Here's the thing, and I've seen a lot of these comparisons being made on social media, And people are going very heavy with that. They look at the Karmelo Anthony situation. They see how he was sentenced. And then people now are pulling from these different court cases all over the country, and they're saying Karmelo Anthony got sentenced this, but this person got this sentence. And they always are reaching for that white person who got off, right? And so they're saying, see, I told you. What's happening is there's an imbalance in the justice system. Here, this black person, they basically throw the book at him. But the white person, well, they didn't do that so much. See, I told you this system is unjust. Well, let's start from the top here. Now, if you've been listening to me, you know we on the same page on that. Okay, when it comes to us, the system is corrupt. Hello, I've been saying I've been saying that. Okay, so we're on the same page that the system is corrupt, right? We're on the same page with that. Okay, but I want to push you just a little bit on these comparisons that are being made, like our friend Justice did. Okay, so I'm assuming this individual you're talking about is a white person, right? So okay, let's take that. But let's also, I want you to have you brought in, did you do side-by-side comparisons with individuals, black individuals, who were constantly released? They committed crimes, serious crimes, but yet they went before the judge, they went into court, and the judge just gave them a slap on the wrist and let them go out. They commit more crimes. And then there are countless numbers of stories where black individuals have been in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out, and they're committing more crimes and more crimes and more crimes. Such is in the case of what happened down in North Carolina, where I think she's from the Ukraine. It was a white woman that was just sitting on a train, minding her business, and then this black guy comes, stabs her, kills her out of just no reason. And then what we find out is that this man has literally been in and out, where the judge just said, all right, you promise not to do it again? Yep. All right, you go back out. And then he does something else. And then they bring him back to the same judge. You promise not to do that again? Yep. Okay, we'll let you back out again. This is a narrative, a story that goes on all the time in America. So let me calmly ask you this. In the comparisons that you've been making or seeing on social media, have you honestly did a side-by-side comparison to, let's say, Karmelo Anthony versus these other individuals that are out there, black individuals who have been released, caught and released, caught and released, commit more crime, caught and released, caught and released? Does that sound like justice to you? I mean, we have to be honest here in our assessments, because, like I said, what the internet is doing is trying to curate a narrative, but it's just on a few variables, just two main variables, black and white. But if we look at if we widen the scope a little bit, we'll see that this justice system has been doing this to all sorts of people, catching and releasing them all the time. So my basic question to you would be this: are you just as angry? Have you demonstrated the same level of anger at that injustice as you're demonstrating now? That's a question that you personally will have to answer for yourself. I can't answer that for you. But the thing that, like I said, getting back to what this woman was saying here, is that when you do not, when you allow other people to build these narratives like that, you know, building these memes and stuff like that, that are just, you know, they just quick bottom line, that's it, and don't give full context. What you're doing is you're leasing out your own intellect into thinking like what we're talking about right now. You understand what I'm saying? The other thing is, when we talk about this injustice system, the other thing you have to grab hold of is that these are different cases that happen in different states with different circumstances. You understand what I'm saying? There's a whole wide array of variables. It don't just boil down to white versus black. You understand what I'm saying? Am I saying, again, let me repeat myself. Am I saying that there isn't any type of injustice or skewing to where black individuals tend to get the hammer a little bit harder? Am I saying in a general scope that no, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying it does happen. That's what I'm saying. It does happen. And we're not pretending it doesn't happen. But does that happen in every case? I would say no, it doesn't. And there's no real hard data that you can point to that says that. Okay? So I'm trying to get people to understand just to expand your brain a little bit, to engage this prefrontal cortex part of your brain where you can really begin to engage. Mauricia, that was the one thing I forgot, and I was going to ask you about this. I was going to actually, have you heard of this treatment? There is many of y'all heard of shock treatment, right? Where they literally connect you to probes and just shock you, right? Well, it's a procedure. I know the word magnetic is in it, but basically what it is, you put on, it's like a cloth almost, and it has little like magnets on it. And then there's like this, it's a machine, and you connect it, it's almost like a helmet, but the helmet is connected to this machine. And they use it for people who deal with severe depression. And if you're dealing with severe depression and the meds aren't working, this is another alternative. And what it does is that it focuses on the dormant parts of your brain. You know, when people are dealing with severe depression, there are parts of their brain that should be very active, but they're not. And so this device will literally use magnetism to basically to change the direction, I think it is, of the electric pulses that are already going through your brain at every given moment. And what it does is it helps to get some energy, or, getting some activity in those dormant parts. And I was going to ask you, what your thoughts were on that, because I was very intrigued by that, because I was like, it's approved by the FDA, but that don't mean anything. But just very intrigued by that. And I'm gonna look into it, because I literally set it aside, but I'm live now, and I don't feel like looking it up. But my point in bringing that up is just to tell you that there are when you're on social media, and when you turn your brain over, your intellect over to the algorithm, there are literally parts of your brain that are very active. Usually it's the center of your brain there, your amygdala, but your prefrontal cortex a lot of times gets shut off. Okay? So let me give you another example of what I'm talking about. Let me see. Now, many of you, if you've been on social media, you have seen a lot of people bring up, it was an all-white jury. It's an all-white jury. Here we go again. It's an all-white jury. It's an all-white jury, and because it's an all-white jury, we're never going to get a fair shake. We're never going to get a fair shake in this country, right? Well, the jury in the case of, what was his name? Cyrus. Well, the jury, half of the jurors were black, and you still wasn't satisfied with that outcome. So which is it? You understand? And so I've seen people already going to the Emmett Till archives and pulling up the famous picture of the jurors. They're all white men and all that. And they're saying it's the same thing today and all that. It was all white people in it. But what these people, when you're just scrolling, what they're leaving out is the fact that when they are selecting who they want, who is going to ultimately be on the jury, you have both the prosecution and the defense. They are both in the same room, and they with the judge. So both sides and the judge are all in the same room. Okay, so I don't know. These are the parts that get left out, and they are going through meticulously and asking each juror key questions to see would this really, because what they're trying to do is to get is because the whole theme is justice has to be blind. There can't be any biases at all, one way or the other. There can't be any biases. Now, there's a little game that, both sides will play where they'll see, it might lean in my direction, but it can't be too obvious, right? So, for example, there was a case in this particular case here that we're talking about where one of the black individuals that they asked them point blank. They said, about how do you feel about, if it comes down to it, if he had to go to prison, do you feel any kind of way about it? And his response was, well, I can't see myself putting a brother in prison. Now, let me just ask you, let's just ask you this. If your goal is to have blind justice, meaning that you're just wanting justice, right? Do you honestly, let's just be honest for a second. Do you really believe that a person like that would be a good qualifier for someone that's going to mete out actual justice? Do you honestly believe that? That's just something I want you to think about, okay? You don't have to put that in the chat or whatever, but that's just something I want you to think about. Because there's a bigger question that I'm going to ask later, okay, to all of you and whoever's listening here. And so anyway, both sides are looking at this. This isn't a white judge sitting in a room by himself and he's like, I want you. I just want all white people. But the algorithm puts that out there. But that's not true. Okay? So that's not what happened. All right? So there were also white people that were taken off of the list. Did you know that? Yeah, just look it up. It only takes a few seconds. You can look these things up yourself. And it will come up. You'll find it that there were quite a few white people that they both agreed to, we can't have them on, So the people that could have been on the jury, both sides had to agree to that. Both sides. Okay? So I'm trying to fill in what your algorithm isn't telling you. Okay, both sides had to agree to that. So, but the voices that you're listening to are trying to frame it as if, but there was some secret magical works that was going on behind the scenes and all of this other stuff. No. This is why you have to take the time and learn how the system actually works. Okay. So I'm trying to help you with that. I don't need to be a lawyer to tell you that. I'm just telling you. And I am encouraging you to look it up and verify everything I'm saying. I always do that. Ain't nothing to hide. Just look it up. You got ChatGPT, will do it within seconds for you. So there's really no excuse at all, for you to verify any of this stuff that I'm saying. Now, as far as the other thing is the jury by one's peers. That the law says we're supposed to have a jury of one's peers. But if they were all white, which they were not, because there was a black woman who is one person that was reporting in the courtroom. And she said you had people, I think she was saying they were Hispanic. You had, there was some other races on there. But to people's minds, they just said, well, if they're not black, then they're not us. So therefore, they were all white. But factually, again, for me, I'm about facts and I'm about the truth, okay? Factually, it was not an all-white jury. That is false. That is false information. That is not true. But what I'm telling you is, well, you got to show it on the screen. No, stop being lazy. Take 2 seconds and you can look it up yourself, okay? That's another thing I encourage people to do, because if you really want to know, again, like what she was saying, don't count on me to lead you. You need to do it yourself. That's got to come from the inside. Do you understand what I'm saying? You got to want to do that. I had a young lady, the short I did recently, I talked about businesses, right? And the point I made in the short that I just uploaded yesterday was, without going too deep into it, but basically I was saying that as a black entrepreneur, if you're a black entrepreneur, you want to run away from protest money, because the logic is so off on this, because what these individuals out here, they're saying, we're going to protest Asian businesses, right? We're going to protest Asian businesses because of what happened in that child verdict and all that. And I can't stand Asian people, and I don't want to go to their businesses anymore. And so I hate them so much, I am giving them an ultimatum. If you don't give us the service that I demand, I'm going to support black businesses. I want you to understand. Does that even make any sense to you? If you don't do what I ask you to do, doggone it, I'm gonna raise my kids right. Okay. You know, that kind of thing. Anyway, and I got some videos too that I'm gonna show you later on there from people, black business owners, that are also saying something similar to what I was saying to you. Anyway, I'll show you that later. But anyway, see, I was scared to go off on that, but anyway, because I knew I would probably leave. But anyway, let me see what I was going with that. But anyway, so I guess the point I'm trying to make is this, is that it's important for you, very important for you when you're hearing these different things coming on social media, especially about this case and all that stuff, to make sure that you are doing your own due diligence. You understand what I'm saying? And so anyway, getting back, okay, so the point I was trying to get to was this. It was people are saying the jury by your own peers. Okay, so let me see if I can pull this up on the screen. Right. Just said black businesses are plan B when folks get mad. Isn't that something? Anyway, I have a, let me see, because I just have a screenshot, and I'll just do that as opposed to me trying to look it up again. I'm gonna bring this over to my computer. Just give me just a moment here, because I have it right here on my phone, and I want to share it with you because I want you to see it. It is right here. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Okay, here we go. All right, so let me share this with you, all right, so that we can get some clarity on even on this issue. All right, so let me see. That would be under here. That would be under. I think this is it. Is this it? Nope. Be trying to embarrass me now. Okay, hold on. That's desktop. That would be downloads. Or is it here? Okay, here it is. Here it is. Here it is. Here it is. Okay, here it is. It's right here. Okay. All right, so let me get this up on the screen so you can look at it. We're going to look at it together, okay? So we're going to learn something for those of you who don't know, and I'm not trying to insult anybody's intelligence, okay? What I'm simply doing is we're going to look at what the law says, okay? In a legal context, a peer is generally defined as an equal before the law. It refers to an individual who shares the same legal status and fundamental rights as another person. The concept of a peer frequently applies in specific legal scenarios. Jury of one peers, guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution via the Sixth Amendment and rooted in historic English law. This phrase does not mean a defendant is judged by people of the exact same race, gender, social economic background, or age. Instead, it means a defendant is entitled to a fair and impartial jury randomly selected from the broader community. Okay, so that's the legal definition. When you hear people say jury by one's peers, that's exactly what it means. But the people that we're hearing all on social media, in the echo chamber of social media, they're not using this definition. So it begs the question, what kind of justice are they actually looking for? I mean, let's cut the crap. Let's just be, and like I said again, I'm like, let's just be honest. You know what I mean? I really do. I'm like, let's y'all, for real, let's just be honest for a moment. You know, as black folks, we're known to be very straight up, right? We want to be, we're straight up people. We're just going to tell it like it is, right? Well, let's do that here, okay? So let me ask you something. So is this about the color complexion of the people on the jury? Is it about that? Or is it you want another type of justice, which I would call street justice? Is it real justice based on this parameter that's given here? Again, we know that the greater system is corrupt. We get all that. We understand it. We've already covered that. But this right here that I just showed you, it's the foundation of what normal, you know, which is like the purest form of justice, if you will, right? Where the people that are on that jury are people who basically they're not picked. Remember what I said, by both sides. They're not picked because they're black. They're not picked because they're white. They're not picked because of this. They're picked because, again, they have been able to demonstrate the minimum requirement of being able to be impartial. Okay? Now, what we're hearing is that because these people are white, or, you know, well, some of the people are white, then it's impossible for them to be impartial. That's what I'm hearing. But I would just simply encourage you to go and to look at, and there's plenty of resources that you can pull up. There are many examples of individuals who were acquitted by all white juries, black folks. Many examples of that. Have you seen that in any of your memes? Of course not. Because these voices, the algorithm is trying to program you into thinking a particular way. Okay? And then I could tell you on the flip, I played that video before of the woman who basically said out of her own mouth, black woman who was on the jury for O.J. Simpson, she said, according to her, she said 90% of the people on that jury, the reason why they said that O.J. was innocent was because of what happened in the prior big case that took place in L.A., the Rodney King case. So they said, we're going to make him guilty. We're going to make O.J. guilty, innocent, as a way of payback. Does that sound like justice to you? I mean, really, does that sound like justice? But here's the thing. For some people, that is justice. See, that's where I'm trying to get people to understand. This is where I'm trying to get at. What kind of justice are you really looking for? Are you looking for street justice? Or are you actually looking for justice in the purest form that we can get it? Which one are we looking at? That's the question that's before you. One of the questions that I want to present to you. I'm asking, what kind of justice are we talking about here? And unfortunately, a lot of people can't. They have the inability to be honest with that question, because you can't have both. You understand what I'm saying? You can't have both. And I think even now they're trying to do an appeal, and they're trying to run it through all again. But I don't think that's going to go anywhere, because honestly, this really was not a complex case. I'm talking about the Karmelo Anthony case. It was pretty straightforward. I mean, quite honestly, it wasn't any complexity to that at all, you know? And so, yeah, so that's what they're going to try to do. But that's the thing that a lot of people are hanging their hats on is, well, we got to get some black people on the jury. Well, okay, so by having black people, so if you get black people on the jury and they vote the same way, now what? And that's why I went back to the case involving Mr. Chow. You had literally half of the jury box was made up of black folks. And what they gave, the response they gave, you didn't agree with it. And so then I saw people trying to make up, without even seeing any of the black people on the jury, there were many black folks that started saying, well, they must all be tethers. Of course, it's always got to pivot to that. I want to play a video as I'm thinking about this right now. This was a video that I came across. I think who sent this to me? Someone sent this to me. Where is it now? This is the attorney for, in the case of the child case. This is the attorney. Let me see if I can. Oh, here it is. Okay, here we go. I was trying to find my window. I couldn't find that window there. Okay. So I want to play for you that this is the video of the attorney, and I want you to hear what he is saying. As soon as I can find it here. And because you had black people that were coming after him and saying, why is it that you're, how could you represent this Korean guy? How could you have brought yourself to represent this Chinese guy? You're supposed to be on team black. Let me see if that's not there. Okay, hold on. This was from, I'm trying to remember who sent this to me. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Okay, I remember now. Okay, here it is. Here it is. I had to remember who sent this to me. Okay, all right, here we go. All right, here we go. All right, and for those of you just joining, as always, thank you. Really appreciate you here. All right, so this is Anton Daniels. He is playing. He's commenting on the video, but he has the video playing. So let's join in and let's take a listen to this video here. And this is the actual attorney that represented the Mr. Ricky Chow, the guy who, ended the life of 14-year-old Cyrus. I don't have his last name right now in front of me, but I'm trying to see. I see what's going on. I was like, why is this thing chopping off here? Okay, here we go. Let's take a listen to this video here, and we'll continue the discussion.
So I just got done defending a pretty high-profile case that I think most of the world knows about. And a lot of folks have been asking a lot of questions, and usually I don't talk about the cases, but in this situation, given the negative attention and the vitriol and the racist threats and the death messages that myself and my family, I thought I'd address some things. And one of the biggest ones people have asked me is, why would you take on this representation? Now, first, I've been practicing law for over 25 years. Here recently and shortly, and actually throughout that entire time, I've represented 3 African-American males who are accused of raping a little white girl. I have represented an individual who was accused of killing a person, folding his body and sticking him in an abandoned building in Florence, South Carolina. I have represented a young lady who was accused of killing and drowning her newborn baby. I have represented countless individuals who have been accused of criminal sexual conduct, countless individuals who have been accused of child pornography. I represent an individual in Florence who was accused of murder, killing his rival along with his wife, who was also in the car. So there have been countless individuals who I've represented in the past, and so when someone says, why did you take this case? I don't judge. God judges. If you pick and choose who are you going to judge in your cases, it makes you ineffective of what you're doing. And so people say, why this case? Well, why not any of those ones with the outrage that has come forth? As criminal defense attorneys, we represent the Constitution. We represent individuals. And so when people say comments to me, and I've heard a lot of them, like, you didn't have to take this one. Well, I don't have to pay my mortgage either, but if you don't, they end up taking that from you.
Okay. So, excuse me, there you go. So he basically broke it down. See, on one hand, we can't sit up here and say, well, we need more black representation in the attorneys, amongst attorneys and all of that. Well, this is what it looks like. an attorney, you're not going to just sit up there and say, well, I'm only, there are some attorneys that were out there that say, I'm only going to represent black people, and whatever the mob wants me to represent, that's who I'm going to represent. Well, that's going to make you a very ineffective attorney. If that's what your only focus is that. And I would even argue, and this is a mindset that even we had to break out of ourselves, is if you are an entrepreneur that happens to be black, you are stunting the growth of your business if the only people that you're targeting are black people. That's not to say you can't target black people. That's not what I'm saying, because we do that all the time, because I'm sorry, that's just a part of who we are. That's what we're going to do. But if we really want to grow as a business, well, we're going to have to swing the doors much wider open and treat everybody the same. And we got to do all of that. That's how it works. You understand what I'm saying? So likewise, an attorney, like in this case here, that's what they do. But again, the mob, they only see, we don't like the outcome, and why did you do this? And I saw on social media, they were pulling pictures of his wife out. And like he said, people were threatening to kill him and do things to his wife. These are black folks that were saying this stuff, all because they didn't like the outcome. Now, again, like I've always said, these people really don't even give a damn about that young boy. They don't. Because if that was a black man and not a Chinese man that did it, you and I wouldn't even been talking about young Cyrus. We wouldn't have been talking about it. You know it and I know it. Why is it that we can't be straight up with things like that? That's the problem. One of the issues that I really have. We can be straight up about it, everything else, but we can't be straight up about things like that. I don't get it. I do get it, but I don't get it. So anyway, it's going to take a bit of honesty, and it goes back to ties in what I was saying earlier, as far as how there is, I understand when I'm communicating and I'm talking about bringing up some of these stories that are a bit negative and show a negative light. Like I got a few that I'm going to show you, things that happened recently. In fact, I will, maybe I'll jump to that comment. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. Let me see. Let me bring this up here, because someone left a very interesting comment. And like I said, as long as you're respectful, you don't have to agree with everything I'm saying. I mean, that's not the point at all. I don't want, because we're human at the end of the day. So, we're all going to have our disagreements on stuff. So anyway, let me see if I can find this thing here, the comment. If I can try to see which post it was. It might have been this one. Hold on. Oh, yeah. It was this one. Here it is. All right, so let me pull this up here for you. Okay, so this is the code of conduct post. I don't know if you guys saw this or not. If you haven't, you could take a time to read it. Basically, I was just saying, and this was kind of, getting back to the main point of this broadcast. And I was saying that what has been established is what I would call the Karmelo Standard. And I'm going to talk more about that. But basically, in this post, I was just going through and saying that the standard is, because basically, what people are saying is that he was just trying to defend himself against these two white guys. That's what people keep repeating over and over again. However, what's being left out is that it wasn't just these two brothers. There were black guys as well, athletes, as students that was around him as well, who were also repeatedly saying, hey, listen, you need to get out of this tent. But the algorithm, again, wants you to only focus on these two white brothers. That's it. But they literally marched black people who were also there and agreed and said out of their mouths that they said that, what's his name? Karmelo Anthony based on what we saw, we were right there. As people, we were right there. And yes, he was the one that was really trying to agitate the situation. That's what they're saying. So on one hand, you set this demand up that everybody has to be black. But then when those black folks don't say what you want them to say, now all of a sudden they don't count anymore. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so the mob mindset is, well, just focus on these two brothers. That's it. But you had everybody else that was around there. They were saying the same thing. The only person that touched him was the one guy that actually physically touched him. And according to what the witnesses said, I wasn't there, and you certainly wasn't there. So the only witness the testimony that you and I can base any conversation on is what was shared in court. We can't go by what Tariq Nasheed is saying. We can't go by what Professor Black Truth is saying. We can't go by some of these other ass clowns out here. They weren't there. I wasn't there. So there's only one source, and that was what was said in court. It don't matter if you change the judge out, the jury, it doesn't matter. The witnesses were there. That's what they said. You have white witnesses and you got black witnesses. That's period. You can't get around that. Take your emotions and park them. Only thing we can focus on is what was actually mentioned in court, not the people that are standing outside the court that are out there acting a plum fool, and I can show you videos on that. But I'm talking to people who were actually in there. You had black folks and you had white folks saying the same thing. Okay? That's what they're saying. So that's the only thing we can go by. Okay? That's not about, I just hate this boy and I want to see him. Nobody's saying that. You saying that. Because you want a team A and a team B. I want Team Truth. How about that? You remember someone named Team Truth in here? I want Team Truth. That's what I want. And that's what you should want as well. And so anyway, what was I going to say here? So getting back to this here, just really quick here, but there was someone who left a comment under this post here. Let me bring it back up here. I'm not going to get in for a second time because I do want to show these videos here. I just want to speed things up here. But in this post here, I'm basically asking the question. And the last broadcast I did, again, it was another one of those broadcasts where I meticulously took the time and I said, listen, and like I did in the earlier part of this broadcast, I said, listen, black folks, when I'm saying black people and I'm saying black culture, in other words, the infractions of a few, let me just say it this way. The infractions of a few do not speak for the total. For those who follow this platform, I always say that. I never lump and say all black people think this way. Just like I say when I'm talking about black women, I'm very careful when I'm talking about black women and being very specific in what subset of black women I'm talking to or talking about. It's the same thing when I'm talking about the black community. And I'm specifically highlighting the word unity because I really want your brain to be engaged. When you see that word, every time you see that word unity, what I want you to do is to ask yourself, do you feel unified with these types of behaviors? And these are behaviors that are widely accepted. And what's happened and what was, I won't say it was established, but it's been given the gold seal of approval in this Karmelo Anthony case is if someone touches you, you have every right to kill them. That is the Karmelo Anthony standard. But the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, that's been the standard. That's been happening with other black people. That's been happening. Let me show you this example here. This is one that I came across today. Now, these are two black individuals. Let me see if I can find it. It was right here. I got it. Now, there's going to be some language in here, but it is what it is. But This right here, this ain't AI, it's a real video, okay? But I want you to pay close attention to this, okay? Pay close attention, take a listen. Like I said, there's some language in there, I'm just letting you know.
Gotta be fucking kidding me, boy. This motherfucker got his fucking headphones on. Told me to motherfucking put my fucking... He told me to put my speaker down. And he got his motherfucking headphones on. You out your fucking mind, my man. I want to fucking cut you. So shut your fucking mouth then. So shut your fucking mouth then. Mind your fucking business, you fucking bitch. Why you had to jump out there? You got fucking headphones on, you fucking bitch. What, you think I was a fucking punk or something? Yeah, that's the best thing you better do, nigga. Move, you bitch ass motherfucker. Yeah. Yeah. That's what you gotta do. That's what you better do. Yeah. 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 You don't want no drama with me, motherfucker. I'll cut your fucking face open. Are you fucking serious? You gonna tell me to fucking put my speaker down? And you got fucking headphones on? I'll fucking cut your fucking face, faggot.
Okay. This is every day. This kind of behavior happens every day. Again, am I saying all black people act this way? No, I'm not. What I am saying is that the culture that many black folks have chosen to embrace doesn't see a problem with that. That's what I'm saying, okay? So if you can get past that, you'll get what I'm saying. So here you got a case where this black individual is telling another black individual he's threatened to cut him. All because this individual, and we didn't see what happened prior, basically asked him to turn his music down. And this other black individual is telling him, how dare you say that to me? In fact, if something were to happen, he probably can say, well, you know, I felt a little threatened, you know, because he told me to turn my music down. He'll try to push that. I'm just saying, this is where we are. We've been here. It's not like, oh, Karmelo brought all this. No, this has been here. The whole reaction that Karmelo Anthony gave, that is part of the culture. Not all black people act that way. Okay? Do I need to say it in the other language for you? That is not what I'm saying. What that is because what that is, and you look on the thumbnail here, like I said for this video, you got those two parts of your brain, your prefrontal cortex, that's the executive part of your brain that says, hold on, player. Before you reach for that knife, let's think about this for a second. Let's process this. Is this really worth all of that? Just get up and then deal with it later. It ain't worth it. But the amygdala is like, wait a minute, I've been disrespected. How dare you tell me to get up? How dare you you understand? That's your amygdala. And if your amygdala is reacting that strongly simply because someone told you to get up, where you're that angry, what that tells you is that there's some other unhealthy things that were going on there. I'm just saying, in other words, there are people that will piss me off if I let them every other day. You understand what I'm saying? But there's nothing in me, thankfully, where the first thought comes to my mind is, man, if they get near me, I'm gonna kill them. I don't think that way. Because why? I surround myself and I guard my ear gate and my eye gate to make sure that there's nothing feeding my brain to automatically pivot to that. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I never think that way. But when we listen to, and like I said, again, some of y'all are really underusing platforms like ChatGPT because you can do these searches too. I did a search. I said, list out all the hip hop songs that talk about or glorify strong, violent reactions to simple infractions. It gave me an entire list of songs where this is constantly being reinforced over and over and over and over again. Man, if you come me, I'm going to cut your head off. I'm going to cut your neck. I'm going to slice you up and I'm going to shoot you in the head. So what do you think? So when our young people are always on social media, on these platforms, see, I told you it's going to loop right back where your prefrontal cortex is being bypassed and it's only focused on feeding that amygdala. What's happening is your amygdala is overpowering your prefrontal cortex. So it's emotion after emotion after strong emotion after strong emotion. And then meanwhile, your prefrontal cortex, again, the literacy thing that we were talking about earlier, you're not able to properly read any situation. So you automatically will shoot to doing something very violent. You understand what I'm saying? Now, I know we're Tuesday quarterbacking here, but that's what I'm saying. When you sit back and look at this thing, a lot of people are so fixated on, well, he was just standing his ground and all of that stuff. And if I thought about it, I would have had that up too. What stand your ground, what it actually means and how it actually doesn't apply here. Again, it's not me. I'm just looking at what the legal source actually says. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's what I always do. And I tell you to do the same thing. Go to the source. Okay? Always go to the source. What is the legal definition of that? What does that mean? Let me listen to an actual attorney who's been practicing this, and let me see what they're saying on this. Okay? That's what you have to do. So anyway, videos. I have videos. Let me see here, and let me jump to that real quick here. Excuse me, and I really appreciate each and every one of you guys, you being here and listening in, and I hope it's really doing something where it's actually getting you to think. That's what I want. I want people to think things all the way through. All right. That's what I want. All right. So here's this woman here. This is, speaking of attorney, again, this is where you have to really do your research. All right. So this woman here, I'll just pull this up here real quick. She's out in front of it at the court, which, by the way, outside the court, it was like a whole circus out there. Again, me observing. What was one of the things I noticed out there? The overwhelming majority of people out there that was screaming and crying and cussing people out, it was black women. That's just an observation. Are they a representative of all black women? No, I'm just telling you what I observed, and I thought that was something. That really was something there. And so anyway, here is this woman here. I forgot her name here, but let me play this for you. Just listen in.
Let her talk. This was a legal lynching that happened in here today.
We can't hear.
All right. I said, as a former prosecutor, this was a legal lynching that happened in this slaughterhouse. This is a slaughterhouse.
She said, this is as a former prosecutor, I want you to put an asterisk by that. She said, this was a legal lynching.
This is not a courthouse. This courthouse is designed when you would come here and you look like us to slaughter you. That judge intentionally.
Let her talk.
Okay, so she's a former prosecutor, I think, within the state of Texas. So I said, well, let me look her up. In fact, she was actually on Roland Martin's show. She was featured on Roland Martin's show, giving her take on the case. Now, watch this now. So I looked her up. Again, it took me seconds to look her up. Do you know that this individual right now is being investigated by the federal government for defrauding taxpayers with PPP loans? So how in the hell are you going to give a legitimate legal take when you have been practicing illegally to the point where you lost your job as a prosecutor because of the PPP loan situation? But again, what's coming out of her mouth at that moment, it fits the narrative. It fits what's out there, the algorithm. And people are, let her talk. Let's listen to what she got to say. That's not even the last person you want to listen to. Because, I mean, if you were literally, that's why she said former. That's why I said put an asterisk by that. Because if you are an attorney, a real attorney, you're not going to be talking like that about the judge or the courthouse. You are not going to be talking like that. That means she ain't probably even got her license. Because there's no lawyer out there that I know, a real lawyer, you ain't going to be talking like that. Now, they say some harsh things, but they don't talk like that. And I never heard a real lawyer go off like that. So anyway, I just thought that was something there. Let's see here. This was a, I'm literally trying to spare some of the stuff here. Here's a story here that just happened. I'll just share this with you right quick. Heartbroken family says daughter 7, too young to understand dad being fatally shot by an obnoxious teen on bus, daddy's little girl. This is the young man, a father, he's 41 years old. He was headed to pick up his daughter from daycare when a youth shot him on a Bronx bus. Folks, this happens literally every day. I can't tell you the amount of things I can show you right now. It would, I don't want to, a reason why I don't show this stuff, a lot of this stuff, is because I know for many of you, it would be too overwhelming. So I try to spare the audience, the little audience I have, by not showing a lot of this stuff, because it would be quite overwhelming for a lot of you. You know, and I'm not sitting up here saying, well, y'all weak and I'm strong. It's not that at all. It goes back to what I was saying earlier, I'm an observer. I look at things, and and I carry stacks of stuff on all types of topics. And this is just one of them that I'm very interested in. I track this stuff a lot, and these stories come up quite often of Black individuals who have been victimized, and they do not get the same amount of coverage. And so my question has always been, why? Why is that? We could say that we need to protect our youth. We need to protect our children. But here you have a story here where a Black man basically chose to run down this little girl. Nothing to be said on that. His bond is set for $1,000. Going back to justice there, does that sound like justice to you? You literally killed an 8-year-old girl who was just simply riding her bike. You killed her. And they set him out on $1,000 bond. Does that sound like justice to you? Why does the life of this girl, why does that not come up on our timelines? Why is that not talked about? And this is why, again, I always am asking you, is this the culture? Is this a culture or community? Do you see yourself unified with this type of care and concern? Or lack thereof, I should say. I mean, I have stories of women. This is just in the last couple of days. This is beyond what I just posted on the community page. Women who were killed, murdered, children who were brutally murdered, This is in the last few days, y'all. Since my post. And I bring these stories up all the time on other platforms, and people get either angry or they just try, want to call you names or whatever, or they just simply ignore it. So my question to you is, with this Karmelo Anthony story, you can be invested in any story you wish, but my question to you is, here you have someone who, according to the court, at the end of the day, he was ruled, he was a murderer, okay, at the end of the day. The community, what we call the black community, see so much value in this man, in this young man, that they raised over $600,000. Even after the ruling came down, people were still raising up money for him. I have a video of a woman who was saying that we need to continue to raise up money for him, fill up his, whatever they call it, the commissary, whatever they call it when you're in prison, the money system they have in there. They were saying we need to raise up money for him so that he's going to be taken care of in prison. Here's someone right here who actually did a song on the behalf of Karmelo Anthony. Let me bring this up.
Trap man, railroaded. Free Karmelo, free Karmelo. Whole hood screaming, free Karmelo, free Karmelo, free Karmelo. Whole hood screaming, free Karmelo. Run, get chased, stand up, catch a case, same game, different.
I can't play any more of that. They literally are making whole songs about Karmelo Anthony. Whole songs. Does that sound like something that you can get behind that? I want to get this, and I'm just gonna wrap this up here. Hold on. And what I do forget, whatever I do forget, I'll just put it in the post or whatever. I'm trying to find it, see if there was anything else. Oh, the business owners. That's right. Let me show you this. Getting back to the boycott stuff, let me show you the business owners. That's what I want to show you. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, here's yeah, okay. I was trying to find, okay, here we go. Right there. Okay, here we go. Let's see, which one was it? I'll start with this one.
I hear you, but if we're going to replicate the business models, then you guys might as well just stay in the shops. Their business model works because they focus on quantity of clients and not the quality of service. The reason they have been so successful is because they have cut every single corner that they possibly could. They're not licensed. 90% of them are using illegal monomer, which is MMA, and in most states is a misdemeanor. Mm-hmm. It is a crime. The cost of my monomer for the jug that I get is $150. The jug that they get is about $20. That's no exaggeration. On top of that, sanitation and cleanliness. I discard of every file, every sanding band. I sanitize in between clients. They are not doing that. That costs a lot of money. Like a lot of money. If I'm throwing away a file after each client and they're using one file on 10 clients, the business model only works if we cut every single corner. And when we cut that corner, we're going to have to deliver the same exact experience because we're not going to be able to focus on the quality. And we all know how that's going to go. We won't call on them, but y'all going to call on us. Won't write reviews on them, but you'll write reviews on us.
Yep.
So this is not a fair game, and they know that. Although the game isn't fair, I'm still willing to give it a try. But I seen a lot of people in the comments saying that we just don't want to. It's not that we don't want to. We really do, but it's just not as simple as you guys are making it seem. We need everybody, not just the business owners. We need the consumers to get on one page first. Like, we have got to. And not even just in the beauty industry. We need unity.
There you go. There's that word again, unity. There's some other videos there, but I'll just skip those for now. But it's other salon, not salon owners, but they do nails. There was one that was really good. Oh, let me see, because there's one that was trying to see which one. I think it's this woman here. Let me play this.
Boycotting's not enough. Boycotting the Asian community is just not enough for me. Honestly, I feel like we need to understand what we're competing against. All right. And in order for us to like really crush our competition and let them know like we really don't need them for real, because we don't. And what that video told me was that their business models, they came here and they made great business models that work in our own communities. And we haven't figured out how to do that. So I'm going to take my accounting expertise and bring it to you. So first of all, we need to understand what we're competing against. All right. Now, one person goes over to Asia, they come here, or that one person comes from Asia, they come over here, they work, save money, buy a building, open up a nail salon. They call 5 of their family members and say, hey, nail salon is up and running. You guys come over here and we're going to start working. Now, this is the one thing we're missing and we don't understand about our competitor. They're not going to pay them the same thing that we would expect here in America. Why? Because their expectations are different. They're not coming here thinking they're going to make $17 an hour. They're actually okay with making 10. They're not rich. So their largest expense is now cut in half. Not only that, but their business model makes sense for our own Black communities, right? And I'll say for the specific communities that one man was talking about, right? He's talking about low-income communities. Let's keep it a band. And the reason it works for us is because their price point is low. Why is their price point low? Because they do high volume. High volume meaning there's 5 different people, maybe 6, 7 different employees in there. They can afford to have 6, 7, 8 employees there because they're only paying them $10 an hour. They do not have to pay them the standard rate of like 17. So they can have more employees in there, right? So more employees equals more people that can get done, right? They can probably bust out about $1,500 to $2,000 a day working on maybe, 30, 40 women in one day. That's easy work for them. And that's only one day. So high volume is what helps them. High volume, low price point, okay? Also keep in mind, largest expense is very minimum because they're using foreigners to handle their labor and their business. All right, so now let's talk about us in our Black community. I'm not sure why we have all these one-off nail salons. And what I mean by one-off, meaning you have one person in this nail salon, in this studio that's charging about $150 per set. That doesn't work. Why would that ever work? 1, you're not helping the community. 2, you're not giving jobs. 3, yeah, you might be making $600 in a day. But how long is that going to last? It might not be consistent, and you're doing all the work, right? Because you're just one person. So you're doing the marketing, you're doing the sales, you have to do the nails, you have to do the cleanup, the taxes, the accounting. You're doing everything because you're one person. But if you opened a business, you can spread the wealth. So hear me out. Again, disclaimer, I am not in the nail industry, so I don't know all the details. But I'm an accountant and I'm really good with numbers. So follow me here. What if we did 2 different models in a nail factory? Meaning the first...
I'm going to stop it there. She gave pretty good tip there. And her name is Trice the Accountant. TRICE the Accountant. Trice the Accountant. You could just look her up on TikTok or whatever. But I wanted just to play that part there because I wanted you to hear these are the things that unfortunately are getting lost. Everybody just saying we need a boycott and that's it. But they're not taking the time. Remember, they're not using their whole brain to think these parts all the way out. There's a lot more involved in that than just simply deciding we ain't going to go buy it from them or whatever. You could do whatever the heck you want. I'm all for, having a foundation where, black folks, will always consider buying from other black people. I'm all for that, but it's gotta be done in a way that it's not emotionally driven. You understand what I'm saying? Because those are kind of customers you don't want. You trust me. And look at the latest short I posted. You do not want emotional customers, because they usually turn out into the worst customers. And that's just across the board. Okay. We've had emotional black customers. We also have emotional white customers. And these are people we ended up having to cut them off completely and block them. And we've done this for years. Okay. So anyway, so these are things again. So just to recap again, the title of this video is talking about the Karmelo Standard. And we talked about in two parts. We talked about this standard where that's already been in existence, where we are talking about it's okay for us. We're giving ourselves by promoting this whole thing of like, he was in the right for what he did and all of that. And don't you touch me, otherwise you're going to get this, right? Well, we've been putting that in practice for a very long time. And we talked about that, just internally. And so that standard has been in play. Number two, we also talked about what justice I'm challenging you and asking you, what justice are we talking about? We looked at the common things that are out being said right now. It was an all white jury. What we looked at the facts on that. We also looked at where they said a jury by your own peers. We looked at the facts on that as well. So what justice are we referring to? Are we referring to the actual justice, as in justice, in of itself, in its most rawest form that we can achieve? Or are we talking about street justice? And if you are someone that's saying that there has to be a certain amount of black people on there, otherwise we will not get justice, then what I submit to you is that you are no different than the all-white juries that we saw back in the days of Jim Crow, because white people thought the same way, and they knew that, and they were at least bold enough to say, we need to have an all-white jury because we're going to get the answer that we want. Black people in 2026 are saying that's why we need an all-black jury, so that we can get the answer we want. So you're no different than those bastards. You understand what I'm saying? So you have to be honest and ask yourself, is that the goal here? All right. And the community of people who are pursuing that type of justice, is that something that you embrace and you are unified with that type of justice? That's just something I'm asking, and I'm putting that out there. And then finally, we talked about, how this is also being seen in played out in business, in these businesses out here that black businesses owners that are out here. And I just played a couple, but there's many other black business owners that are out here saying, hey, wait a minute now. Because I on that short I included, there was a black woman that's saying, the first thing, I get it all, y'all want to boycott and all that, and y'all more than welcome to come here, but don't be asking me for a discount. The first thing when you come in here. And I'm looking in the comments, and black folks are mad at her because she's saying, she's staying on business and saying, hey, listen, I'm trying to keep this business to stand, but y'all want a discount. And they get mad and then tear her down because she ain't giving discounts. So I'm just asking you again, this is our close here. All right. So we've been on here for a little bit, and I appreciate your time here. Is that regardless if we're dealing with this Karmelo Anthony thing or whatever else that's out there waiting in the wings to get you emotionally charged, what I am saying to you is this. You are, for many of you who are listening to me, you're black. My complexion may be a little lighter or maybe a little darker or whatever. But what I am submitting to you is, just because you are black, that doesn't mean you are automatically enrolled into the black community. You're not part of the black community. That doesn't automatically make you part of the black community. I know that sounds crazy, but just listen to what I'm saying. You have black people who have been raised in Montana all their lives, and that's all they know. That's the community that they understand and grew up in. So that's their community. See, community can be a lot of things. You understand what I'm saying? But what we have told ourselves is by virtue of you being black, you're automatically part of the black community. You understand what I'm saying? And so regardless of the community that you choose to embrace, you have the right to look at it, to pick the things out that you like and embrace, and at the same time to point out the things that you're like, I don't want that. I don't want that in my own life. I'm not going to take this warts and all approach where I'm embracing the whole thing. No, the hell you better not, because the warts and all will kill you, as we have seen. You understand what I'm saying? There are value systems within this community that you and we need to closely analyze, look, and ask questions. Do I see it okay if someone touches me? Do I feel that I have every right to kill them now? This is where we are now? Or are we saying that, well, that standard only applies to certain people? Be honest. Don't have yourself encoded. Don't talk in this coded language. Just be straight up about it. You understand what I'm saying? And so the honesty, that should be the foundation of whatever community you either build on your own or you choose to be a part of. It's got to start from a place of honesty and transparency. And what I'm saying is there's not a lot of that going on right now. There's a lot of loud talk, but there's not a lot of transparency and honesty going on when it comes to that, because a lot of people are asking for or demanding justice, but they're not being clear on what kind of justice that they really want, or they are being clear, they're just not saying. So anyway, that's all I have for you guys. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you guys got something out of it. And as always, you can leave a comment or whatever it is something you agree with, disagree with, whatever, just leave it below. All right. So thanks again, you guys. Really appreciate each and every one of you. You take care. We'll be talking again soon. Take care now.